Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Point Three podcast. Today, we are bringing you very, very hard episode to make because we had to make a lot of difficult choices. But we are giving you the top three, what is, in our opinion, the most impactful, the most important Marvel movies in history. This includes everything. So, this is before the MCU. If you're watching this in the future, post MCU, whatever we are in whatever year you're watching this. But if this is your first time, thank you. Make sure you subscribe. We are your favorite trio of hosts: Spider Brando on the right, Uncle Lou on the bottom, myself, Hero Scroll. But without further ado, before we reveal our top picks, gents, quick question: how hard was it for you to pick your movie?
It was so difficult. We got into a tussle over one of them. A virtual throwdown over this one was so highly coveted that friendships were tested and computers were broken. And it just,
Webcams were smashed.
yeah. Thanks. Shout out to Amazon for getting us new ones. It was a battle. It was a battle. But I think we settled on some good ones. I'm excited. I'm excited.
This is a hard ass freaking task, though.
Yes.
Like, I love all Marvel movies. Not all of them. Most of them. This
Episode 8.
There's so many to choose from. So really picking out 3 and then dwindling it down to 1. So freaking tough, man. So tough.
Yeah. Just to give everybody kind of a behind the scenes, like Spider Brando said, we did narrow it down to just 3, and then from that 3 we picked 1. But it took so long that we were supposed to do this last week, but we didn't. So it's this week now when you're seeing it as of the time of recording. So just know we put some work in, we put some thoughts into this. This is not just us willy-nilly picking 3 Marvel movies just for the sake of it. And in fact, while you might hear some of the more regular ones, you might not hear the same reasoning. But I'd like to say that we picked some picks that I think could almost go in that dark horse category that sometimes people don't think of at times.
Oh, yeah. But by the end of it, stick around to the end, right? Because when we lay all this out and we really explain the why behind all of these choices and what makes them so impactful and so important, the great thing about Marvel movies specifically, and with all of the content that we've continuously gotten over, a decade plus by this point, it's so fluid. You can't say that for DC yet, but with Marvel, it's so fluid. And I think you have a good handful of movies that really have risen to the top. And the reasons why are very unique. And for us, again, we add to your viewing experience and your perspectives. And I think we have 3 really well-rounded opinions for each of these movies, and we'll have opinions on each of them as well. So this should be really fun. We're very happy for all of you listening and watching.
Yeah. And one last disclaimer. Again, this is just our personal opinion. So if you feel like it's a different movie, that's more than okay. And the great thing about specifically all of Marvel movies before the MCU and right now, any day of the week we can discuss this list and probably different ones will come out on top. So this is a video we can come back to 2-3 years from now.
Oh, yeah.
And probably redo it again and have a different list for the 3 of us. So, but without any further ado, let's not keep the good people, the good Point 3 people waiting. Spider Brando, we're going to throw it over to you first. What is your most impactful Marvel movie of all time?
Spider Brando's most impactful Marvel movie of all time, including non-MCU and just anything with the Marvel brand on it, is Captain Marvel. My true answer is In My Name. On My Body. Spider-Man 1 from 2002. Sony bought the rights for Spider-Man for $7 million. in 1999 and quickly turned that into a production of a huge profitable movie that came out to 825 million in the box office. And Spider-Man 1 alone and spawned a whole Spider-Man trilogy and put Spider-Man on the map for a lot of people, and myself included. If it wasn't for that movie and Tobey Maguire and just growing up and seeing the whole trilogy come about, who knows if I'd have this tattoo or be wearing this Venom shirt or have so many freaking Spider-Man Funkos and memorabilia.
Spider-Man definitely has that nostalgia factor going for it. But I'm gonna hit you with mine. Now, this is definitely a movie that I don't know if a lot of people think about in terms of most impactful or most important, whatever you want to call it. But I'm going with a movie from 2016, which is a little more recent, but it has to be everybody's favorite Merc with a Mouth, Deadpool. We are getting his third movie this year, and I'm going to double down and say that without his movie, we would not get a lot of things that we see from the MCU in general. So we're going to get into that later.
Oh, gentlemen, kudos on your picks. However, there is one movie that can stand as a little bit more impactful than the rest of them that has shaped fandom today to the point where people don't know what they want outside of this type of movie. Started in 2008 and we worked our way all the way up to 2012. This movie has over a 90% on critics and audience score on Rotten Tomato, an 8 on IMDb. It is the OG Avengers movie that catapulted Marvel into beyond the stratosphere and set expectations that can only be rivaled by the Spider-Man IP. Avengers 1 is the most important movie for Marvel all time.
I hear a lot of people being, yay, Funkaloo's our favorite because we agree. It's either you or Spider Brando. Me, I'm probably thrown out in the cold.
Now, no. You know what's interesting about yours? I wouldn't say that, because while Deadpool is not my particular most coveted and rewatchable Marvel movie, there's something to be said about how unique the movie is without getting into it, because I know you have plenty to say on it. Without a doubt, though, it's that fine line of what Marvel fans always want in every single project for the most part, but we really don't get. And like, you only get that feel. And that's why I think people say like Deadpool is Deadpool, because Deadpool is super unique from a live action standpoint and has arguably one of the greatest leads to ever suit up.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm curious. I'm curious what you say on that one. I do want to say though, when you guys were thinking about each of these movies, what was the most impactful part of each of these that stood out for you to kind of, that you always came back to and you're like, this is the moment, or this is the thing, or the character, or the person, or something that made it great? And here, we'll flip it back to you.
I was going to say, I think two things right off the bat that hit me. And I hate to say this, but it is how executives think: money and fan reception.
Mhm.
And that obviously includes myself in it, right? Money is so important, because if these things don't make money, if that is part of their impact, right? Because that is what sets the standard for a lot of these other movies. So to just kind of give an example, with Deadpool, a movie that had next to nothing for a superhero film budget, especially in comparison to nowadays with only 58 million, made I don't know how many times over, with I think 770 something, I believe it was. 782 million. Think about that. that showed executives right away that they're like, okay, there's a market for R-rated movies. There's a market for superhero movies still that we can make. You know, at the time before Fox was acquired by Disney, that we can make. And the fans are going to flock to it because Deadpool had legs. Because I remember Deadpool, I didn't get to see it till about, I think, third or fourth weekend. And I went with a friend of mine. And when we went, I think it was like 2 p.m. on a random weekday. That theater was packed. Packed. It was insane. It was insane, the legs that this film had. It was so unique. And to be honest, I don't know if any other movie will capture that lightning in the bottle feel that Deadpool uniquely has.
I like that. I like that.
The Deadpool theater experience was fun. I remember I wasn't looking at it. It came out in 16. It came out before I was 17 and like able to see a rated R movie. And I remember me and my friends had tried to sneak ourselves into this theater, and I happened to work at this theater a couple months later. And I had tried to sneak into it and just like buy tickets for a different movie. We got kicked out. And my manager remembered me when she hired me. She's like, "You tried to sneak into Deadpool, didn't you?" And I was like, "Oh, that was like 4 months ago. How the hell do you remember that?" But I don't know. I digress. That was just a random side story. Yeah, theater experiences definitely great for all three. I'd say 2 of our movies. I don't think I was I don't remember seeing Spider-Man 1 in theaters. I was like 3. 2.5. Two and a half.
You think your movie manager had a good memory?
No, but I just wanted to tie in how at least your guys' movies had great theater experiences from me being able to see them. But mine, unfortunately, I don't remember if I saw it or not in theaters. But we all had some box office sluggers, is what I was trying to tie at.
What did you like about Spider-Man 1 the most? Kind of that big moment or that thing that always sticks out as kind of like your callback to it of why it fits that mold of being the most important movie for you.
Just like being introduced to the Spider-Man character. Raimi had a very intriguing job to kind of introduce the character of Spider-Man to a world that wasn't too into him besides like comic readers. And he did a killer freaking job at like within even the first 10 minutes of that movie, just setting up Peter Parker and like the characterization of Spider-Man pretty damn well. It changed a couple things here and there, obviously with the organic webs. Which I know some people are like, oh, like it's just not Spider-Man, but I'm like, it's just an adaptation. Who cares? And Green Goblin is, to answer your question, definitely always sticks out on how menacing and kind of like horror movie Raimi aspects that he had for the Green Goblin always scared me as a kid and just felt like it truly like Spider-Man's ultimate foe. Like how he was in the comics, video games, and all that.
Yeah, I mean, those are all really, really, really good points. I think the one thing that Avengers has that a lot of movies don't is something that we talk about often at the Point 3 podcast is that event level feel. And I think for a lot of us, Avengers made fans of people who really never were really fans of superhero and comic book characters. Although Deadpool did in a certain way, and although Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man really did, if you talk to a lot of people and you're like, hey, who's Spider-Man? You're like, oh, Tobey Maguire plays Spider-Man. And you're just like, I think the other guy did too. And then that new Tom guy is doing it. Like, people know Tobey. People know Deadpool. People know the Avengers. And this is the first time that you really got the sense that like the MCU was for real. Because we've seen solo movies, Iron Man had his team up, you know, you get your post-credit scenes and they weren't really a thing, but they were kind of a thing. And you get Thor, and then you're just like, whoa, like what is going on here? I have all of my favorite heroes that I've been watching for the last 4 years fight against a villain who's working for some other really big villain who's a really big deal. And they had a massive fight in New York. And it was everything that you would want from a comic book movie from a team up standpoint. And from a team up standpoint, we really only got that at this scale, this level of quality, animated. If you were looking for some team up stuff, you had to go animated. That's what we grew up on. And for the first time, Marvel Studios specifically planted their flag and showed us the true team up movie that I think leapfrogged most things that came before it. Although without those things that came before it, you don't get the Avengers, that's for sure, because you don't get Iron Man, right? You don't get that movie that starts at all. But the Avengers, what they did in 2012 is what we are begging for in 2024.
I was just going to say, you make such a good point, and I think that that also ties into very well all three of our picks, where they're so unique. They're very much a first of their kind type thing. Bringing back the point you said, if you wanted to see these characters, these types of movies, the only way you could was really going into a medium where it hadn't been done before.
Mm-hmm.
You went animated, you went comics, Deadpool, you went animated. For the longest time, how many people were like, Wolverine versus Hulk is probably one of everybody's favorites because of Deadpool. I can't remember any other one that he came out in, but for the longest time, you know, and even when he came out in his own video game, his own later on in the Ultimate Spider-Man animated show, like people were clamoring for it. And same thing with Spider-Man for the longest time, 90s and, you know, the 90s series. That's what people were like, yo, this is peak Spider-Man for a lot of people. But it was such a medium that I think ultimately loses casual fans, because some people will forever see something animated, see something on a page of a book and be like, nah, that's lesser because it's not on a big screen.
Yeah.
Just think, man, freaking, like I said earlier, Sony bought Spider-Man for $7 million. That's such a massive return they got back. But too bad they're fumbling with their whole SSU. We don't talk about that.
No, but I mean, think for the time though, when you go back to Spider-Man specifically, of no one knew Tobey Maguire, no one knew anyone who's really a part of that project. You knew the director, and you're like, well, what are you going to do with a superhero movie for the most part? And then you watch it and you're like,
wow.
Yeah, it is a wow. You go back and you rewatch this, and I think all of our movies stand the test of time in a lot of ways because of how unique that they are. But name other movies. I mean, you can because we had 9 movies on the table. But I think these 3 specifically have fans hungry for those types of movies to recapture what they did at their times. Even going all the way back to 2002 with Tobey's Spider-Man, there are a lot of elements that I personally would put ahead of Andrew and Tom's, no question. And those core elements are at the heart of what I like as a superhero. Same thing with Deadpool, where you have that version of a character that you really just don't get anywhere else. And with the Avengers, good luck trying to do that. They tried to do it a second time, flopped. They eventually were big enough that they made a third and a fourth. Great. They haven't been able to really put it together since. And the attempt that the DCEU had didn't go well the first time. And the Snyder cut, I mean, you're like, but it was really good. Like, I'll watch that movie once every 6 years because I will fall asleep every single time. It's just way too long.
Who's got freaking 4 hours to just casually spare also on a rewatch?
2 in the morning.
Some people do, but
can I do it? Can I do it? Right. So that being said, I want to talk about one thing, because every good movie needs a good villain, right? talk to me about how you guys feel about your antagonists, whether that be a person or a theme or something in this movie that stands opposite of your main character that they had to overcome, but made it impactful enough to aid to the choice of, hey, this is a really impactful character. What was it? What hurdles were in front of these characters that they had to jump in order to get to the end of this movie and then ultimately into our hearts?
Where do I even begin with Goblin? Man, this dude's so good. He had to come back again to haunt a different Spider-Man.
Right?
Oh, he just like I don't know the whole. For me, something that really stands out with Norman and Goblin is just the fact that it's Peter's best friend's dad that wants to kill him, and then like once he puts the two together, that he realizes it's Harry's dad. He's just like shit. Screws up his morality duality. See, he can't screw up, or like he wants to obviously save his best friend's dad, but needs him to stop being the Goblin and doing bad and going after his freaking family and loved ones.
Mm.
So obviously, just like every Spider-Man story, always confronted with having to choose, or not choose, but to prioritize saving stuff or saving people. And just the whole aspect that the Goblin brought to really go after Peter and Aunt May and everyone that he loves just always stands out and shows how freaking menacing he was. Even in a different universe. I don't want to bring this No Way Home stuff, but dude's so menacing even in the freaking whole new universe. He's still out there scheming and being badass. Dude
Shout out
was so
Willem Dafoe.
willing. Dude was so willing to take Spider-Man out. He freaking pretty much would have done what am I trying to say? When he stabs himself with the glider.
Mhm.
Even I said if Toby never moved, that dude was still getting stabbed no matter what. So he was willing to take himself and freaking Toby out just because he was a dick.
Yeah. No, great point. To your question, Lou, this is without a doubt Deadpool's weakest link of the entire film is its villain. I think when everybody reviews Deadpool, they're like Ajax Francis is probably the most like basic cookie cutter villain that's ever been in any movie, right? But I think what Deadpool does is it does a good job of taking that weakness and playing it into the strength of just Deadpool.
Yep.
Where it doesn't become the movie isn't Deadpool versus Ajax. It's Deadpool hunting Ajax. And once he's finally there, it's more him going through his minions. You know, the fight is cool enough, but it's really only like a couple minutes long. And then he just kills him. That's it. It does a very good job of, again, going into and leaning into Deadpool's personality, where, again, I think one of the most memorable scenes for everybody is the compilation of him hunting Francis down, taking down his minions, him nailing down his costume. They do a good job of, again, just making it part of Deadpool's story and making it more his insecurities and Deadpool against himself, where at the end of it, Deadpool is a self-destructive character. They kind of show you that through bits and pieces of the movie. And he kind of overcomes it, right? But he doesn't at the same time. So I don't know. Again, I think that this is one of the only comic book movies where, let's be honest, comparing it to Spider-Man 1, Avengers, heck, even like most of the MCU, I think if this movie came out today, a lot of people would be like, yo, the villain was sucked. And back in 2016, that's what everybody said. But it still gets a pass. And that tells you how well they wrote around the villain problem, because let's be honest, at the same time also, they were never going to give Deadpool a top tier X-Men villain on his first movie. Never was going to happen.
That those two choices that you have, Spider-Man Own Hero, just highlight to me how strong the team was that was surrounding each of these projects. Because today, I think to your point with Deadpool, if you were to take that criteria of, hey, this is going to be a weak villain and here's a fun hero, people are going to be like, this movie is going to be trash. I think most people will be like, this movie is going to suck. But when you rewatch the movie over and over and over and over again, I don't feel that way. There are a lot of movies I can walk away from and I'm just like, the villain really bothers me and there's really no villain presence in this and I just can't watch this. Like, that's a massive part for me. But that is the strength of the writing. That is the strength of the main character. And that is just how much of a star Ryan Reynolds was in Deadpool. And I think on the flip side of that, for Spider-Man, you do have that Green Goblin, Spider-Man, just they're two sides of the same coin in different ways and they flip it on you. And they run that through the entire movie. The interesting thing is Avengers doesn't necessarily have that same formula to follow, but they kind of follow it. And the coolest thing that I think that you get when you have Loki show up first in Avengers is the first person in the choice that they make of who he faces when he does appear. And it's Nick Fury. And it sets everything in motion. I think it would have been it would have fallen very flat if Thor showed up first, or if he would have shown up in the Berlin scene would have been first, or Iron Man would have been his first adversary. But having Nick Fury show up and be like, listen, we have such a massive problem. We got to call the Avengers. Let's put the team together. Let's make it happen, because there's something much bigger than anything we've ever faced. And in hindsight, when you go through the chronological order in the MCU, knowing what you know about Captain Marvel, I don't think that's an issue because Captain Marvel came out afterwards. I think that is really just to showcase the threat that Loki really posed, that he wants to go through with his Avengers initiative. And I would go out on a limb and say, based on what we know about Captain Marvel, if he just called Captain Marvel and she showed up in place of Avengers 1 with Loki showing up, I'm going to be honest with you, I don't think she wins that. To me, the Avengers are top tier. Could have done the pager and could have done the beeper instead of assembling the team, but
Disney wouldn't have like 6 billion-dollar movies after that then.
Which is kind of a really good point. Look at what this spawned. That alone, if you were to just say with the catalyst for the MCU, I mean, the expectations that this movie created, which is kind of Jekyll and Hyde in a way, again, you wanted to feel that movie again. Now,
I wish I could watch it for the first time again.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. If there's one thing that you guys can go back and see about your movie for the first time, a scene, and experience it again for the first time, what scene would you pick?
I'm gonna have to go with the compilation, the music video one.
Yeah.
He's going around killing Ajax's henchmen and going through different suits. I honestly think that's like peak movie for Deadpool.
For Spider-Man, I don't know. That's a tough one. I feel like I've seen this movie like so many times. I want to just say like the whole movie, but I think one scene I'd always go and rewatch, or at least like will never skip when it pops up on like a YouTube suggested clip or whatnot, is the Thanksgiving dinner.
Ooh,
that one is just, few people that listen to Point 30, I love my morality, duality, and dialogue shit. This, you pretty much got it between Norman and Peter, and them slowly finding out that they know who each other are. The whole knife thing still irks me every time someone sharpens knives. still irks me from that. It's crazy to say that something like that is my most watchable in a whole Spider-Man movie, and not just like Spider-Man swinging around or whatnot. But
sorry, gents, I gotta throw the haymaker here. Literally, if I could, and I miss moments like this, I would go back to when Mark Ruffalo shows up on his little scooter, and the Avengers are like, "Oh man, this might be it," and he just drops his line, "I'm always angry," transforms and Hulk smashes. I miss that Hulk.
yes,
Of just that absolute powerhouse.
When was the last time we saw a good Hulk?
Yeah.
Legit.
Yeah. You don't need to look around. No one's coming for you on that one. That's just the truth.
I was waiting for the MCU FBI to be like, open up.
Kevin Feige shows up at your door.
Tell me more about this moment. Right?
Yeah. What do you mean?
Kevin, you need to tell
Dude,
me
I
more
hope he
about
did.
this
He
moment.
could hop on our show right now.
To that point, and we can lead this into the next question before we wrap up. Each of these movies, I think what they do extremely well is that fan satisfaction, right? Lou, I can kick this back off to you. What do you think that, besides the Hulk being the greatest Hulk we've seen so far, that was me actually choking, not a cough. What do you think is the biggest fan satisfaction that this does in the movie? Like,
Listen, from like I just think you finally get a moment where it's one movie where it doesn't take itself too seriously, but has elements and moments that are very serious. But everyone can look at that screen and just kind of like dream about being one or two of those characters. Like, people fell in love with Loki. People fell in love with Thor. You double down on your love for Iron Man. Black Widow. People, they want to be Black Widow. You want to be Cap. Coulson had his, like, it's just a moment where it's just overall, it's a movie where you can just get lost and truthfully fantasize about superheroes and comics and just what they mean, what they stand for, and they give you really, really good elements of just everything that you can feel in some medium or another. You felt it here in this movie in live action, and it felt like your final boss level type of movie where it's like final chapter, final part, book this part, whatever it might be, but it was just Avengers. And I think it would elicit a lot of responses. Like if you were to say like a dopamine type of thing and all that kind of stuff,
yeah,
that's what you get from this movie. And it's just, you can't help but to smile and cheer or laugh. Some people cry depending on your character. It's just, you get a lot of range and you cheer for this movie. And still to this day, most fans do.
Especially when you see all of them circle up with one another. So I was trying to point to over here. You probably can't tell because of the lighting, but if I were to rewatch Avengers, I'd be rewatching that scene every time. So I'm like, wow. It's the first time all 6 of the OGs just assembling.
It
Beautiful moments.
It never felt the same afterwards. Even in Age of Ultron, when they had their moments and they tried it again, it didn't hit the same way.
No.
And you didn't really get it again in Infinity War, just the nature of how things kind of happened by the end. And then Endgame, it had its own set of moments, but this was kind of like the purest, most unexpected, greatest moment that, yeah, they circle up and it's just like, that's the OGs. Like, that's the squad. And that's it.
Moment we take for granted.
100%, dude.
Yeah.
100%.
Spider-Man, or how about you with Spider-Man? What do you think it accomplished with its fan service?
I don't know. It did a lot. I mean, like, a lot of people were pretty happy with Green Goblin's costume and how that came out. Toby's costume became an icon. I don't really know how receptive people were to the whole like webbed design that they gave, and eyelids a little different compared to like comic and TV show representations, but most people see that Toby suit now and it's like that's the Spider-Man suit. I don't know, it did a lot. It's just like the whole movie is just like fan service. Just
I'll
I don't have
I'll
like a specific moment, really.
I'll throw this in here because I'm definitely in the camp of it feels the most love letter to the character of Spider-Man. Stealing that from you guys in terms of Tobey Maguire isn't like the cool guy. Like Tom Holland's cool. I don't care what anyone says.
Yeah.
Like Tom Holland was cool in that movie and he's cool in real life. Andrew Garfield was like, every time I took my mask off, I'm like, dog, why does your hair look like that? Like you're fine. And he's just like, oh no, I'm not cool. And I'm like, no, you're definitely cool. Like, I don't know why you're saying this. But then you got Toby taking out the trash and he's like, you're gonna be great, you're gonna be on Broadway. And she's like, you think so? And he's like, yeah, I know so. And it's just like, no, you're a giant dork, like what are you doing? But he embodies that kind of like, I think everyone can be in Toby's shoes at some point in the first 20 minutes of that movie, of just like, you wanted the guy, wanted the girl, whatever it might be, like you wanted that person and they just were out of reach and you would do anything to just be with them. And we're looking at it and we're like, dog, it's just a car. It's bigger than that. And he's like, this is my world. Like, she is my world. And I'm like, you can literally swing all over the world. And he's like, no, I can only swing for her. And it's just some of those moments like that where you're like, I don't care. Everyone's been there in a moment where you're like, you did something like that where you're just like, this is the biggest thing I can do.
And that's why to this day I will forever defend Bully Maguire dancing. Because he's a nerd. At the end of the day, he's a nerd. He's going to do what a nerd thinks is cool, and it's going to be dressing up in black, dancing down the street, shouting at women.
Yeah. Tally ho.
But to throw one final thing in top of the Spider-Man fan service, I think something that a lot of people always forget, and it's such an important part of Spider-Man in everything. It doesn't matter what it is, but in everything, the web swinging. I think this is the moment that fully realized that type of fluidity, that type of movement can translate incredibly well on the big screen. And it's going to look simply fantastic, to the point where I'd say other mediums chased it for a long time. Animated games. I mean, you look at Spider-Man 2 being like the pinnacle before Spider-Man 2016. And I think without the movie being as good as it is in terms of the web swinging, you don't get that in other mediums. People don't care. And because it looked as good as it did, that's just one more thing that it can add on top of that fan service pile.
Mm-hmm. What about DP?
DP, man, what? The thing is, what isn't fan service about Deadpool? Deadpool is, you could change the subtitle of Deadpool. Like, it could just be Deadpool, hyphen fan service. That could be the name of the movie, and people would be like, yeah, because everything about that movie is fan service. His origin, his costume, Ryan Reynolds, his fan service himself.
Damn right.
I mean, honestly, but they do so much to make it feel loved, down to the fact of honestly still being probably one of the best live action, like comic specific, comic accurate, better said, suits ever. I don't think anything will top it except maybe Deadpool 3. It's crazy, honestly, how well they capture his character, everything. And the added layer of fan services, I don't know if everybody exactly remembers this, but Deadpool started gaining traction when it came up on YouTube, the test footage,
Mm,
the canceled test footage of Ryan Reynolds, and it was the scene on the bridge that they ended up keeping in the movie. Um, people flocked to that video. I remember that video getting so many views, and I remember watching it more than a couple of times and being wildly impressed. And people were like, "We want this, we need this." And eventually the studio heard enough and they were like, "Okay, let's take a risk." This was a risk. That's what I think people tend to forget. Deadpool was a massive, massive risk to do and make, because not only did they make it wrong the first time, an R-rated movie like that, unheard of at the time.
Man, I'm gonna rewatch this movie now, especially before Deadpool 3.
I mean, listen though, obviously Avengers has been topped by other Avengers movies and some solo films, if you call them that, in a way. And I think Spider-Man 1 for Toby, they've captured certain things in a way. No one's captured Deadpool and recreated that feel that Deadpool gives fans besides Deadpool. And I always will say this because the hard part about today, when we look back, and we've talked about this, fans want story and quality and all this kind of stuff, right? And it's like, yeah, but fans want action. Fans want to smile. Fans want to laugh. Fans want to go, ooh. Fans want to respond to what they're watching. And man, find me another movie where you're not saying that the entire time during Deadpool, from beginning to end. I always remember watching this with my mom. My mom would crack up all the time at this movie. Even on Real, you want to watch Deadpool? Yeah, let's watch Deadpool. Laugh, 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 laugh. You know? But the action in that movie, I would say, is some of the best in Marvel, especially the bridge part. Oh, man. There's just something about Deadpool's character that I just drool when they do that. It's so unique and so cool and so funny. That bridge scene from Car to Splat to Francis and all that. I would put that in like top 7, top 5 all time.
I think a lot of people would agree with you, because you look back at what held the record of highest grossing R-rated film, and it's The Matrix Reloaded, which I think for a lot of people, including myself, I would put it up there in terms of like top 10 action movies of all time.
Oh, yeah.
It held the record for 13 years.
Yeah.
And then Deadpool came in, shattered the record by 40 million, and made it commonplace to where R-rated movies are now once again moneymakers. Because I think for a long time they were things that people were ultimately losing money on. They were lower budget. Deadpool made it commonplace where you can get higher budget R-rated films.
Mm-hmm.
It was easier for them to be greenlit. To be quite honest, even though Oppenheimer is the second right now, I'm going to go ahead and say it. If you don't get Deadpool, you don't get Oppenheimer.
Defining those ratings is very interesting, especially in today, because I was always in the camp of like, it goes PG-13, maybe there's some sort of 17 that falls into there. I don't think so. R, and then MA. And then you got Marvel being like, this is rated mature. And I'm like, ooh, this is going to be like more than R? And I'm like, why isn't this PG-13? This is weird. I don't like that. And then you got Deadpool. It's like, I'm R. And I'm like, damn right you are. Like, yeah. Genre defining rating movie that just found all of these, just found their niche and just are champions and leaders of each of those areas. And that's why they're on this list. That's why we have them and we talked about them today. they're extremely, extremely important, and they're always going to affect the future. And when something tries to redo this, or they're going to point back to each of these movies and be like, this one did this, this did this, this did this. Did you do it better? Go conversations.
They're always going to be the measuring stick for everything else.
SP, final thoughts?
I'm sorry I got none. You guys just cooked.
Well, dog, you always got oatmeal or something. Just
Yeah,
throw it in,
come
just
on.
zap it real quick. 2 minutes. Final thoughts on the list. And after now talking about these things, do you still feel good about your choice?
Yes. I'm very confident. If my movie wasn't as successful as it was, y'all movies wouldn't have been made. Just saying.
Truthfully, last question for you. Knowing your movie is the way that it is a complete sidebar. Why were they not able to recreate that when they decided to move away from Toby?
Sony just wanted to. It just seemed like they wanted to just try something new, and for the times that did not really age too well, at least in the second film. The first one was a great start in Amazing Spider-Man 1. I thought that was a great start. It had a lot of potential. I don't know, I just couldn't capture exactly what Sam Raimi brought to the character of Spider-Man. It seemed like Sony was kind of making that just to make it and try to keep the rights. Didn't have all the love and juice, like the team around it, as you said earlier. It's quite unfortunate for Andrew.
It's tough to recapture that magic. That is for sure.
He tried. Andrew tried, but it seems like Sony just didn't.
Well, everybody, you heard it here. That's our list. To quickly recap, Spider-Rando picked Spider-Man 1. Funko Lou picked Avengers, or The Avengers 1. And I picked Deadpool 1. Those are our top 3 most important, most impactful Marvel movies ever. Do you agree with us? Do you disagree? What is yours? Let us know in the comments. Let us know on our social medias. Make sure you subscribe to us here on the YouTube channel. But until next time, everybody, there's 3 things that you need to do. You need to keep watching. You need to keep reading. And forever, you need to keep nerding out. See you next time.